Welcome back to Beyond Skin Deep. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about dating, the psychology and the science and the case studies behind dating, because we are not using Instagram memes or TikToks to teach us about dating. And honestly, I think dating is something that people need to take a little bit more seriously, okay? So the first phase of dating we have is the lust phase. Personally, my favorite. Okay, so we have the lust phase. You meet someone and you're super attracted to them, and all of the rumination and ideation about them starts to happen in your brain. And all of a sudden, you find yourself on his mom's Facebook page at 2 a.m, and you can really tell that he is a family guy, and you're just like imagining the future with him. So, evolutionary psychology says that the reason why this happens, it serves as a survival mechanism. This brain state is designed to laser focus you on one potential partner long enough for you to mate. Now, hold on to that piece of information. Long enough to mate with that person, okay? The obsessive quality is literally a survival strategy for your genes and for human procreation. I think we've all felt like animals in this phase once before, but this one really makes sense because you know that feeling where you were lusting for someone so bad, so hard, so fast, and then finally you get a taste of that person, or you get to woohoo, and then all of a sudden you're like, the post-nut clarity is 2020. All of a sudden you're like, wow, that is not my person. What the was I thinking? Welcome to being a human being. Welcome to being an animal. Don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for telling this story or not, but I'm just going to go ahead and share it because I don't think my friend watches my YouTube channel anyways. It's funny because she even said like, oh, I'm going to go to this event because maybe I'll meet like somebody that I could date, or maybe I'll meet like a potential partner. And then she calls me up after the event and she was like, oh my gosh, I met this amazing guy. He's super attractive. He's a doctor, da 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 da. Checks off like so many things on her list, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. You like manifested that, girlfriend. And she was really happy about it. So they go on their first date. She calls me. She's like, oh my gosh, it's electric. It's so exciting. Like there's so much chemistry and it's undeniable. Like and it was just like so intense for them both, it seemed. Anyways, a couple dates in, they end up giving in and doing the funky dance in the pants. There was definitely some post-nut clarity that I think happened. And all of a sudden they're recognizing ways that maybe they're not the most compatible. And essentially, they just went through so many phases of dating and so many phases of a relationship so quickly. And this brings me to my next point, is dopamine. Dopamine is so important to talk about, especially in the early dating phase, okay? Dopamine is a neurotransmitter, and whenever you are in that lust phase, or your visual cues or your brain or its feedback loop is telling you, I like this person, dopamine is also being released, okay? So dopamine is a neurotransmitter that gets you really excited to have something. It's not released once you actually have that something, okay? Dopamine is not released once you finally get the delicious ice cream cone that you've been waiting hours for. It is released on the way to the ice cream shop. It is released in line at the ice cream shop when you are looking at all the different ice cream flavors. That is when dopamine is released. Dopamine is a mechanism that allows us to chase something and to achieve something. You want a result out of dopamine. And the same works in this early phase of dating, right? And you want to be able to make it past that dopamine phase, okay? So, same thing. What does dopamine in dating look like? Well, it looks like anticipating the person. It looks like, your heart racing as you're getting texts right before your first date or second date or whatever. And this is why so many of us get hooked on the chase of dating, the chase of acquiring a new person. Especially men who really enjoy dating and chasing new women. It's a dopaminergic behavior. Dopaminergic means, like, if you're a dopaminergic person, you love that chase, you love that dopamine, you love achieving something, and then you need more of it to feel fulfilled for the next thing and the next thing. Those are dopaminergic behaviors. I think like this is the psychological awareness that we need in going into a lot of these dating situations, because if you don't even know about the dopamine and lust phase of dating, you're going to get love bombed. Actually, as I'm sitting here talking about this, I'm realizing like this is why so many people are getting love bombed, and you're over here blaming somebody for being a bad person. It's not even that person maybe is a bad person. That person probably just had a shit ton of surges of dopamine in their brain for you, and they were so excited, and they probably really meant the things that they were saying to you. But then the dopamine wears off and they got the ice cream cone, and now the ice cream cone just doesn't taste so good, and you probably feel bad after eating an entire ice cream cone so quickly, and you're probably not going to want to eat ice cream again tomorrow. I hope this analogy is really clicking to a lot of people. I think you can really start to ask yourself, am I actually into this person? Or am I just high on the buildup? Think about it. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about during the lust phase of dating is our ego. Our ego is an important thing, and it's one of the first things that we learn in Psychology 101. Okay, so let's take a look at the ego during dating. In psychology, the ego is basically the part of your mind that manages reality. Freud broke this down into 3 parts: the id, your impulses, the superego, your morals, and then your ego, which is the mediator in the middle. The ego's job is to balance what you want versus what's socially acceptable versus what's actually possible, what is realistic, okay? So that's how we're gonna look at the ego in dating. In dating, your ego will be the part of you that says, I really want this person, but how will this person make me feel about myself? And how will this person affect how I will be seen? So there's an interesting tidbit about this that I wanted to share, and psychologists call it the self-enhancement theory. We're naturally drawn to people who make us feel more attractive, more valuable, or higher status because that boosts our own self-concept. That boost is not just emotional, it's addictive. And when someone desirable chooses us, our brain reads it as proof that we're actually valuable in the dating market, in the dating economy, which raises our own perceived social rank. And that is why the ego high from a new attraction can make you overlook so many red flags. Your brain is way too busy celebrating and focusing on your status upgrade than to think about this person is toxic. Hada from Love Island is such a good example of this, actually. I'm really not going to get into it, but I don't like her. But whenever I was reading this self-enhancement theory, immediately I thought of her because she is somebody that is so toxic and so poorly behaved and clearly needs to put in so much work on herself, but it's constantly overlooked because she's just really, really attractive and she has a high social status and she's an influencer and she was on TV shows. It really does make a lot of sense. Like the other day, and this doesn't happen very often, but the most attractive guy was shooting his shot at me. And God, did I want to let the shot land, if you know what I'm saying. I really did. And I was ignoring a ton of red flags just because of how hot this person was. Then me, because I'm crazy, all of a sudden I'm imagining it would just be so perfect if me and this hot guy were together. That's my ego talking. So aside from our dopaminergic brain and our ego having a very involved role in the early lust phase of dating, we also have our 2 lovely sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone, that like to join the party. Okay, when we newly become interested in somebody, for whatever reason, our visual cues tell our brain, ooh, I like this person. And then we get a boost in, for women, estrogen, or for men, testosterone. My sex drive has been dead for the past 2 years. So when my brain sees somebody that I'm interested in, I swear all 3 of these very important factors in my brain are on overdrive. They're like, holy shit, we like somebody, we're attracted to somebody, we're interested. And I don't know how to handle it. I literally feel like a 7th grader. You know how crazy we felt in junior high or whenever we had our first crush and we're experiencing all of these feelings for the first time and we think we're literally going crazy? After being out of the game for a while, I do feel like other adults like me can also have a higher sensitivity to some of these feelings as compared to somebody who's been dating back to back or monkey branching from relationship to relationship. Anyways, your dopamine craving for this ice cream cone grows as you think about the ice cream. And our ego is saying, wow, if you get to eat this ice cream cone, you are officially the coolest person in the dating market. I'm also going to talk about serotonin's role in all of this craziness and why we all get a little bit of crazy in this lust phase in a couple of seconds. But before I do that, I wanted to read this article from the American Psychological Association titled, What happens in your brain when you're in love? Let's begin. You can't eat, you can't sleep, and your stomach and heart flutter when this person contacts you or suggests spending time together. But what happens in your brain when you begin to feel lust struck, and how does the brain change over time when it becomes actual love? Love is a biological necessity. It's as needed for our well-being as exercise, water, and food. And from a neuroscientific viewpoint, we can really say that love does blossom in the brain. I'm going to go off on a tangent really quickly, and then I'm going to finish the rest of this article. I remember in college, I loved learning about the baby monkey study. And this is, again, super oversimplified, but there was a very memorable study about baby monkeys. And they had a robotic mother monkey and an actual mother monkey. The robotic mother monkey was able to give the baby monkey all of the nutrients and resources it needed, like food, home, shelter, and it did not give the baby monkey love, care, or physical contact. And then the mother monkey was able to give all the love to the baby monkey, but the baby monkey was limited in terms of resources, shelter, and nutrients. Studies show that the baby monkey that had limited resources, but the love from its mother, ended up being healthier and smarter than the baby monkey that was only given the resources but not given love. And this again just shows how important love is for the development of our brains and for us as a species and for the development of society. Love is the most powerful thing in the universe, and it is truly magical, and it starts in our brains. Let's go back to the article. This article goes on to talk about Lucy Brown, who is a neuroscientist and a professor of neurology, and her lab partners used fMRI to study 10 women and 7 men who were intensely in love. Participants in this study viewed a photograph of their loved one and a photograph of a familiar person. When viewing the photo of their loved one, participants experienced brain activation in the midbrain's VTA. That is the part of the brain that's connected to meeting basic needs, such as drinking when we're thirsty or eating when we're hungry. And it goes on to say that while we think about romantic love as this euphoric and complex emotion, the activation that we see in the brain, in this very basic part of the brain, is telling us that romantic love is actually a drive to fulfill a basic need. Our brain wants us to find love. Our brain wants us to find a mate. The researchers also noted that levels of serotonin, a key hormone in regulating appetite and intrusive anxious thoughts, drop. Low levels of serotonin are common among people with anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorders. Now, this is where I wanted to go back into the lust phase. We have that dopamine phase. We have the boost in estrogen and testosterone, but then we also have this drop in serotonin. All of a sudden, your brain's regulator for intrusive thoughts is at its weak point, and those intrusive thoughts are having a party in your brain, sister. They're like, oh my gosh, I am literally going to drive past his house right now and make sure that there's not another girl's car parked in front of his house. Stuff like that, just like, some crazier behaviors are definitely more possible when in love because of this drop of serotonin, okay? I'm glad that we got that out there because it's important for you to know this. You're not actually crazy. Maybe you are, but also maybe your serotonin is just low and your dopamine is high and your estrogen and testosterone are just surging through your body and you just want to do a quick, drive-by to make sure that there's not a girl parked in his garage. And that's probably not a good behavior to entertain, but for the sake of today's episode, we're rationalizing it with psychology. No, really, going back to the article, we want to know, how does long-term love differ in the brain? Once the initial excitement of the lust has worn off and a couple becomes more committed, the activation areas of the brain also expand and change. Researchers found that parts of the basal ganglia, this is an area of the brain heavily involved in promoting attachment, giving humans and other mammals the ability to stick it out even when things aren't going quite so well. This is really important to note because the difference between that lust phase and that early dating phase and the long-term love phase and actually growing into real love and attachment is this piece right here. The article goes on to mention that longer-term love also boosts activation in more cognitive areas of the brain. and the parts of the brain that are associated with complex language functions, and most importantly, the mirror neuron system. This is super interesting. This is a region that helps you anticipate the actions of a loved one. This is the reasoning behind couples who finish each other's sentences or have a way of moving around a kitchen together without getting in each other's way. People in love have this symbiotic, synergistic connection thanks to the mirror neuron system. And that's why we often say that some couples are better together than the sum of their parts. And that love literally makes us sharper and more creative thinkers. I love love, and I want a healthier dating community for everybody. And I think that that comes with the awareness of understanding what is going through our brains in the different phases of developing lust and love. One of the most helpful things that I learned about love and psychology, and this was a couple years back, and this is super, super oversimplified, but it is the difference between men falling in love and women falling in love. And that is the role of vasopressin and oxytocin between men and women. And the easiest way to put this is women release a lot of oxytocin. Oxytocin, often called the love hormone, is associated with feelings of trust, empathy, social bonding, pair bonding in both men and women, and it's particularly prominent during childbirth and breastfeeding and facilitating mother-infant attachment. We are wired for oxytocin. It just makes sense for us. That's why women are just the loving beings that we are. And vasopressin is involved in various behaviors, including territorial defense, aggression, pair bonding, and mate guarding. This makes sense. Men want to protect their mate. It's like a really good long-term investment. So when you look at it that way, you really think like, what does a man need to fall in love? It's going to be that trust over time and getting through difficult things together. Whereas for a woman, it's going to be more of those like consistent acts of love. And so lastly, I wanted to circle back into that lust phase because I feel like that's where a lot of us are getting tripped up at. That's the hard phase. That's the one where, you're prospecting, you're doing a lot of prospecting, but you're not really moving on to the long-term love phase, or at least that's a lot harder to get to. I'm just going to go over a couple things that help me in that early phase to make sure that I'm not making the wrong decisions, okay? One thing that I've gotten really, really good at, I just tell myself like, this is not real and this is going to pass. Like it literally is going to pass. And usually it does. The interest does not stay after the point to which I like really get to know the person and I realize that this actually is not a good long-term mate for me. That dopamine just kind of dies down on its own. I promise if it's going to take 7 hours to get to the ice cream store, that by the time I get to the ice cream store, I don't even want the ice cream anymore. You know what I'm saying? You get to rationalize it a little bit more. That's really all I have to say about the psychology of dating and what I know about dating and what I feel is helpful for the general population to know about dating. I hope you guys liked this episode. I hope it helps somebody. Let me know if you have a beautiful love story to share. Share it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this episode if you found it useful or helpful for you. And I will see you in the next episode. Kisses.